All right, here we go. According to multiple reports, Celtics are working on a trade to acquire the Wizards' Kristaps Porzingis in a 3-team deal that sends Malcolm Brogdon to the Clippers. Danilo Gallinari would also be in the deal as he would go to the Wizards. The Clippers would send Marcus Morris, Amir Coffey, 30th pick to Washington, as sides still have more work to do on an agreement. Porzingis would opt into his $36 million contract for next season to make potential trade happen, but there are still outstanding issues to be completed before a deal can be reached. And Shams Charania, the first to report this, but it seems like it's really picking up steam at this point. Tom Giles, Chris Forsberg, Gary Washburn, the Boston Globe, joining us as well. Gary, I'll start with you. Your thoughts when you saw that this trade was, or that it's nearing the finish line, and what it means for the Celtics.
I think it means that they bolster the front court. They give someone who's a legitimate shooter out there another weapon. But in order to get something, you got to give up something. And the kind of the narrative that like Malcolm didn't fit this team. He won Sixth Man of the Year. He had a very good season. He got hurt in the playoffs, so his postseason was a disappointment. But I think the Celtics figured that their front court was crowded, and they needed to add another front court shooter. And Porzingis is coming off his best year of his career: 23 points. Nearly 40% from three, nearly 50% from the field. He played in 65 games, and he's kind of in that Robert Williams kind of neighborhood in terms of games played. So that was really good for him. I think the Celtics can expect, if they get 65 games out of him, I think they'll be giddy with that. But I think it's a good pickup. He stretches the floor. We saw him in that final game against the Celtics when the Celtics kind of threw in the towel, and he was just like, 32 and 13. I mean, he can bring the entire package and then bolsters their front court that needed some desperate help.
So, you know me, Giles. Like I've been saying all along, I think they needed to better balance the roster. I thought they needed to start making some decisions about how exactly this would look in the future, and I think you accomplished both of those goals today by making this trade. The big question is just, how does Porzingis fit with the core of this team? And on paper, it should be great, right? Like all of a sudden, you've got a big man who can stretch the floor, who can should get a whole bunch of open looks if Jalen and Jason are operating the way they have, and that kind of fits into the offensive mold that we saw this team likes to play last season, especially when it comes to three-point shots. And I think he's better defensively than most people give him credit for, and I'm eager to see how he fits here. So I want to see it before I'm ready to say cue those duck boats or anything like that. And yet, undeniably, the ability for Brad to turn like a contract that I thought was going to be hard to get off of into someone that could have a huge impact on this season. And I'm not even looking past this year. I just want to see how it goes this year. Well, then Brad's the real wizard.
And by the way, you can vote from home as well how you feel about the trade or the potential trade, I should say, as it's not finalized yet. But what's your reaction to the Celtics reportedly acquiring Kristaps Porzingis? And right now, about half people say they love it. 42% kind of saying we'll wait and see. And you have 6% out there that say that they hate it. You can vote as well. Just scan the QR code on the screen or go to NBCSportsBoston.com/early edition. I think that one of the simpler ways to look at this, though, and I understand that, Gallinari is involved in it as well, wasn't really part of what we saw last year because he didn't appear in a game due to the injury, the ACL. You brought in Kristaps Porzingis, you lost Malcolm Brogdon. The team is better than a year ago, right? It should be better. And I understand what you're saying as far as games played with Robert Williams and Al Horford, and there's some injury risk there. But, Gary, they're, on paper, better than they were a year ago.
Yes, better than they were a year ago. More weapons. The floor spreads better. It should be easier for Jason and Jalen to get to the basket when Porzingis is out in the perimeter because you cannot leave him alone. So he's kind of an upgrade from Gallinari. I mean, Gallinari is, pushing 35 years old, coming off an ACL. We would have had no idea how he would have played and how long it would have taken him to get back to kind of form if he would have returned. This time you get a guy completely healthy. Now, obviously, the Celtics, I think, will understand that they'll need to measure his minutes and they'll need to make sure that he's completely healthy because Porzingis does have kind of the sore knees here. He'll miss a game here and there. But the fact that he's just such a weapon on the floor, a 7'3" guy who can shoot from the perimeter, dribble. He's a good pick and roll defender, as Chris mentioned. There's a lot to like about Kristaps Porzingis, especially a guy entering his prime, coming off his most productive season and the season he's played the most games since his rookie year. So I like the deal. I'm not crazy personally about giving up Malcolm Brogdon, but I don't think Brogdon I don't think the Celtics did Brogdon any justice with his role. I thought he felt like he could play some point guard. He really didn't play point guard. He kind of played a microwave role where it's like, okay, go out there and score some points off the bench. I thought he could have done a lot more, and maybe he'll get that chance with the Clippers where he'll be running the team.
I'll just get your thoughts here on Kristaps Porzingis and what he would bring to the Celtics in this trade that would send Malcolm Brogdon the other way, as well as Danilo Gallinari.
Well, he's a multi-dimensional player. We all know about his size. We all know about his ability to shoot from the outside. We all know about his injury history. But I think, it's like anything else. Players learn how to develop. They learn how to play in this league. They learn how to use their body in this league. They learn how to manage a season and figure out how to stay on the floor. And that's what I think has been the key with Porzingis in last season with Washington. I think he played at a high level. And if you can keep him on the floor, manage his minutes, play him along with Al Horford, play him along with Big Rob, reduce everyone's minutes as a whole, then you have something, because he certainly looked like a all-star caliber type player at times this year. And the main thing is he stayed on the floor. He can go inside, he can go outside. He's not a pound-it post-up player, but that's not today's NBA anyway. The Celtics will find a way to use him out on the perimeter, but also the ability to make that mid-range jump shot and use his size defensively. He's not a great defender, but that size is prohibitive out there. It's something the Celtics lacked. And the one thing that I noticed, guys, when I watched the playoffs, especially against a team even like Philadelphia, is that the Celtics were drastically undersized out on the floor. And I know they want to play small ball at times, but you do need size in this league, especially in the playoffs.
Do you think this changes the way they play? I'm talking to the Celtics now. Adding a guy like Porzingis, does this change the way we see them, playing 5 out at times, or, trying to play quickly and just constantly shooting threes? Because I think a lot of people look at this and just think, well, it's just another guy who's going to stand behind the three-point line and shoot threes.
I think it will. And I think an off season with a new coaching staff, helping out Joe Mazzulla, looking at tape, understanding what they did well, what they didn't do well, alongside with the input of Brad Stevens in helping maybe develop a better balanced offensive system. I'm all for shooting the threes. We all know that's the new way of playing. But when we looked at the playoffs, the Celtics shot way too many contested threes, and that's why their percentage was so low. If you're shooting good threes, that's a different thing. The Nuggets only took 31 threes a game in the playoffs, while the Celtics took 38, but the Nuggets had a higher percentage. So that's the thing. You got to have a little bit better balance, and I like it because you have another big that you can run your offense through, and another guy you can run the pick and roll, the pick and pop with both Tatum and Brown.
All right, so you do look at the injury history with Porzingis, because that's obviously a part of it. And, Malcolm Brogdon had that as well, but Porzingis had the ACL going back a few years. Had the torn meniscus going back to 2020, which happened in the playoffs. So he's only been in 2 playoff series. Not a lot of experience as far as that's concerned. But he's 7'3", so you're going to deal with some injuries, and that's all a part of it. And you look at the games played, 65 obviously last year. That was the most he had played in since his second year in the league. Mark Stein's also saying that, hey, if this trade happens and he opts in, they could be looking at an extension as well that could be coming in July. How would you feel about the Celtics extending Porzingis beyond even this 1 year, if you're looking at them trying to win this championship in this short window right here, but extending him beyond it?
Well, first of all, the number jumps out at you. I think it's 2 years, $77 million, something like that. But in today's world, you can't look at that number and say, "Oh my God, he's not worth that." None of these guys are worth that from what the numbers were 5 to 10 years ago. We understand that. I mean, Jaylen Brown is an elite player, but really, is he worth $60 million a year, 59? No, he's not. But he's going to get it because that's the way today's market works. So throw the numbers out. If you think he can be an efficient player for you, if you think he can be part of the process, be one of the big 3, maybe the third member of the big 3 that can give you another dimension on the floor, can stay healthy. He's still young. He's still in his mid to late 20s. I believe he's only 27. So he's still young. So you've got a big future. Those guys are hard to find at that age. And also, you have to look at Al Horford. We all know he's in the twilight of his career, and his production came down this year at the end of the year because he had to play so many minutes. If he can play a more limited role now, I think you'll see better production from Horford. And also, if you limit Porzingis' minutes a little bit more, you'll see him stay healthier.
All right, so as it stands right now, okay, so if Porzingis is coming to the Celtics, Malcolm Brogdon and Gallinari are gone, and it also potentially means that this is it for Grant Williams. what's the next move that Brad Stevens needs to make? What is the next need for the Celtics?
Well, I heard you guys talking earlier about a guard, and Phil is spot on. They need somebody who can create. They need somebody who can get in the lane, who can run the team, who can give him a different look than Marcus Smart or Derek White, or even what Brogdon gave him, or even what Grant Williams gave him as a kind of a wing type player. A real true guard who can get in the lane, create, understand his role, get multiple assists, can guard different positions out on the floor. That's one. They'll have to make some moves. I probably after the draft with that, look at some guys down the road. But also, I'm not against the draft. Finding a guy in the draft. 3 or 4 years ago, the Celtics at the end of the first round actually drafted Desmond Bane, who's becoming a terrific player in Memphis, and then they traded him. You can find value at 35. I'd like to see him move up a little bit. I think they'll be able to do that. I'm sure Brad Stevens and company have identified some players maybe are going in the end of the first round. So if they can move up to the end of the first round, they could get a guy like an Andre Jackson, who's just a special basketball player from UConn. He's not a shooter, but so what? I think you have to find skilled basketball players with high basketball IQ. Even a Trace Jackson Davis from Indiana could be available, an undersized big man. So what? He can play multiple positions. He is a good, solid player, a guy that you can add to the mix. And I think that's what they need to do. Keep adding to the mix, maybe not with a splash, but with good basketball players.
I love the fact that you named a couple of guys that are obviously veteran college players, because presumably they're guys that are going to be able to come in and contribute right away. As you look at it now, with Porzingis, are the Celtics the team to beat in the Eastern Conference? Should they be in the NBA Finals next year?
I think yes. I like their mix, and they're going to do something else. That's the thing. And every move Brad Stevens has made since he's become the general manager has been spot on. Pretty much every move he's made, it's a thought out process. It's a coaching process. He's thinking from a basketball coaching perspective. And obviously these guys are all handcuffed with salary caps and contracts and whatnot. But Brad Stevens looks at it. I'm molding a team that I would like to coach, and then he's handing the keys off to Joe. So I think right now they are, but they have to keep their eye on Miami. If they get Dame Lillard, then that issue could change very quickly.